Imagine waking up nearly 170,000 years ago on the African savanna. You stretch, look across the open landscape, and begin another ordinary day. One thought would never cross your mind. I really wish I had a pair of pants. Fast forward to today, and almost every person starts the morning by deciding what to wear. Whether it's a business suit, jeans, a dress, or those loungewear clothes that secretly stopped being pajamas 3 days ago, getting dressed feels as automatic as brushing your teeth. Clothing has become so deeply woven into human life that many societies actually have laws requiring people to wear it in public. Think about how unusual that is. Entire legal systems recognize the idea that being completely unclothed isn't acceptable in certain places. That raises a fascinating question. Why did humans begin wearing clothes in the first place when almost every other animal manages just fine without them? The truth is that nobody knows the exact moment clothing appeared. What scientists have uncovered, however, is far more surprising than a simple answer. Oddly enough, one of the biggest clues comes from tiny parasites that most people would rather never think about. It's a strange reminder that sometimes the smallest creatures preserve the biggest chapters of history. Nature often leaves evidence in places no one expects, rewarding curiosity with incredible discoveries. If this surprises you already, comment 1 if you've ever wondered where something as ordinary as clothing actually began. To understand clothing, we first have to understand ourselves. Humans are unusual among large mammals because we have remarkably little body hair. Look around the animal kingdom. Gorillas, bears, wolves, horses, lions, and countless other mammals wear thick, natural coats throughout their lives. Humans stand out as the odd exception. Scientists believe our ancestors gradually lost most of their fur for a practical reason. As early humans left dense forests and spent more time crossing open grasslands, they became endurance hunters. Running long distances under the hot African sun demanded an efficient cooling system. Thick fur trapped heat, making survival much harder. Instead of relying on fur, humans evolved millions of sweat glands. In fact, our bodies contain somewhere between 2 and 4 million of them, making us one of the best cooling machines on Earth. Sweating may not sound glamorous, but it allowed our ancestors to outlast prey that overheated long before they did. Of course, being excellent at staying cool creates a completely different problem once temperatures begin to fall. A body designed to release heat struggles when every degree of warmth matters. Evolution is often a story of trade-offs rather than perfect solutions. Every advantage creates a new challenge, and human creativity has always stepped in where biology reached its limits. At first glance, the explanation seems obvious. Humans eventually entered colder regions, became cold, wrapped themselves in animal hides, and clothing was born. Except the timeline doesn't fit. Genetic evidence suggests humans may have begun wearing clothing somewhere between 100,000 and 170,000 years ago. Yet large migrations out of Africa didn't begin until roughly 70,000 years ago. If clothing existed long before people settled in freezing climates, then warmth alone couldn't have been the original reason. That means clothing may have started for something much deeper than simple survival. It may have reflected the way humans interacted with one another long before they needed heavy winter garments. Now we arrive at one of the most unexpected detectives in evolutionary science: lice. Researchers studying human lice noticed something remarkable. Humans host two primary types. Head lice spend their lives in hair. Body lice, however, survive almost entirely inside clothing, hiding in seams and folds of fabric. Here's this crucial detail. Body lice cannot survive without clothes. Scientists compared the genetics of both species and discovered that body lice evolved from head lice sometime between roughly 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. That means the moment body lice became their own distinct population was almost certainly the moment humans had begun wearing clothing regularly enough to create an entirely new habitat. Think about that for a second. One of humanity's least welcome companions accidentally preserved one of the oldest clues about when our ancestors got dressed. History isn't always written in monuments or fossils. Sometimes it's quietly recorded by tiny organisms adapting alongside us for thousands of generations. Even the things we dislike can reveal extraordinary stories about where we came from. Comment 2 if you never expected lice to become one of the greatest witnesses to human history. So if staying warm wasn't the original motivation, what was? One possibility is straightforward protection. Early humans spent their lives walking through thorny vegetation, rocky landscapes, harsh sunlight, and swarms of insects. Even a simple wrap made from animal hide could reduce cuts, insect bites, and skin damage. Sometimes the simplest explanation deserves more credit than we give it. The second possibility opens an entirely different window into human nature. Humans constantly communicate identity. We signal belonging, confidence, authority, attraction, and social status in countless ways. Today, we use hairstyles, jewelry, tattoos, uniforms, and fashion. Our ancestors likely did something similar long before modern clothing existed. Evidence shows people were decorating their bodies with red ochre pigments nearly 200,000 years ago, possibly even before they regularly wore clothing. That suggests the desire to express identity may actually be older than clothing itself. Once someone draped an animal hide across their shoulders, the next questions naturally followed. Which animal provided it? Was it difficult to hunt? Did wearing it tell others something about strength, courage, or experience? At that point, clothing stopped being just protection. It became communication. Every civilization eventually discovers that survival keeps you alive, but symbols help define who you are. Long before written language, people were already telling stories about themselves through appearance. For much of early history, garments were probably simple. Animal skins loosely wrapped around the body, tied with strips of sinew, offering function more than elegance. Then, around 50,000 years ago, archaeologists began finding something extraordinary. Bone needles, not sharpened tools for punching holes, but carefully crafted needles with tiny eyes designed for threading fiber and stitching materials together. The oldest confirmed example comes from Denisova Cave in Siberia. Carved from bird bone with remarkable precision, it represents much more than a sewing tool. It represents planning, imagination, craftsmanship, and engineering. Someone looked at a piece of bone and envisioned a tool that didn't yet exist. They figured out how to shape it without breaking it and used it to create clothing fitted to the human body, rather than simply draped across it. That leap transformed survival. Properly stitched garments trapped heat, sealed openings around the body, and allowed humans to survive environments that would otherwise have been impossible. Sometimes civilization advances through grand inventions. Other times it changes forever because one person solved a very small problem with extraordinary creativity. Modern humans weren't the only ones making that leap. Neanderthals had already mastered working with animal hides long before they ever crossed paths with our ancestors. Archaeologists have uncovered specialized stone tools used for scraping leather, preparing skins, and processing animal hides in ways that clearly point to clothing production rather than simple butchering. Their bodies also reveal a story of adaptation. Stockier builds, shorter limbs, and other physical traits helped conserve heat in brutal Ice Age climates. Even with those biological advantages, clothing would have been essential for surviving long winters. Then, there's another fascinating branch of our family tree, the Denisovans. Discovered only recently through fragments of bone found in Siberia, they left behind more than DNA. Researchers also uncovered polished ornaments and decorative objects from the same layers of earth where sophisticated sewing needles were found. Even among a human species we know very little about, there are hints that clothing wasn't only practical. It may already have carried beauty and meaning. That raises an intriguing possibility. Maybe making clothes wasn't unique to Homo sapiens at all. Perhaps any intelligent, highly social species forced to survive harsh environments would eventually arrive at the same solution. Sometimes different minds, facing the same challenges, discover similar answers. Innovation isn't always about being first. Often it's about solving problems that nature refuses to solve for you. But here's where the story becomes even more remarkable. If clothing existed only to keep people warm, every culture would eventually settle on the single most efficient design for its climate. Arctic communities would all dress alike. Tropical societies would do the same. Function would win every time. History shows exactly the opposite. Across every civilization we know, clothing quickly became something much larger than protection. It became identity. Priests dressed differently from warriors. Kings wore garments reserved only for royalty. Ceremonial clothing marked weddings, funerals, victories, and sacred rituals. Even the dead were buried in carefully chosen garments that reflected status and belief. Some of the oldest surviving textile fragments weren't left in their natural colors. They had been intentionally dyed. Imagine someone tens of thousands of years ago looking at perfectly useful fabric and deciding it should be red, blue, or yellow, not because the color made it warmer, but because it meant something. That simple decision changed everything. Humans don't merely wear clothing. We use it as a language. Without speaking a word, our clothes announce countless messages. They tell others where we belong, what role we play, how we see ourselves, and sometimes who we hope to become. No other species has turned protection into storytelling quite like this. Comment 0. If you've ever chosen an outfit simply because it felt like you. As the climate became increasingly unforgiving, however, clothing took on another role that was impossible to ignore. Between roughly 120,000 and 70,000 years ago, Earth experienced severe glacial periods. Temperatures dropped dramatically. Massive ice sheets expanded across continents. Large parts of Africa became much drier. Lakes disappeared. Food became scarce. And human populations shrank to dangerously low numbers. Some estimates suggest only a few tens of thousands of humans may have remained alive. our species came astonishingly close to disappearing forever. For the groups that survived and eventually expanded into Europe and Central Asia, clothing was no longer simply about comfort or appearance. It became the difference between life and death. Well-made garments trapped warm air close to the body. Layers reduced heat loss. Carefully stitched openings protected vulnerable areas like the neck and wrists, where precious warmth escaped most quickly. The people who understood how to prepare hides, sew fitted clothing, and layer materials had a tremendous survival advantage. Their children inherited not only genes, but knowledge. Generation after generation, those skills spread alongside humanity itself. In many ways, clothing became our second skin. Instead of waiting for evolution to grow thicker fur over millions of years, humans invented protection with their own hands. That may be one of our greatest strengths as a species. When nature presents a limitation, we rarely wait for biology to catch up. We build tools that allow us to rewrite the rules. Eventually, another quiet revolution arrived. Humans learned that animals weren't the only source of clothing. Plant fibers could be twisted into thread, woven into fabric, and transformed into garments that were lighter, more flexible, and easier to produce. The oldest known twisted plant fibers, discovered in present-day Georgia, date back roughly 30,000 years. Even more fascinating, many had already been dyed in different colors. Decoration once again appeared almost immediately. By the time farming societies emerged around 10,000 BCE, textile production had become one of the foundations of civilization. People cultivated flax for linen, sheep provided wool, cotton spread through warmer regions. Silk eventually connected distant civilizations through enormous trade networks. With textiles came an entirely new idea. Instead of owning one protective covering, people could own different garments for different purposes. Heavy clothing for winter, light clothing for summer, special garments for ceremonies, practical clothing for work, elegant clothing for celebration. Fashion evolved into a complete system rather than a single survival tool. Entire economies grew around spinning, weaving, dyeing, trading, and tailoring fabrics. Powerful kingdoms accumulated wealth through textiles. Trade routes crossed continents because people desired fabrics produced thousands of miles away. Something that began as a simple animal hide eventually reshaped politics, commerce, and global history. It's remarkable how often history begins with a small invention that quietly changes everything. Great civilizations are built not only by kings and armies, but also by anonymous hands patiently solving everyday problems. So why did humans begin wearing clothes? The most honest answer is that there was never just one reason. At first, clothing probably protected skin from thorns, sunlight, insects, and rough terrain. Soon afterward, it became a way to communicate identity, belonging, and social status. As climates changed and migrations expanded, it became one of humanity's most essential survival technologies. And over thousands of years, it transformed into art, culture, economics, language, and personal expression. The truly remarkable part isn't that humans invented clothing. Given our intelligence, creativity, and deeply social nature, perhaps it was unavoidable. Even today, every morning begins with choices that echo those made by our distant ancestors. Whether you realize it or not, the clothes you put on say something about your mood, your personality, your profession, your community, or the image you want the world to see. More than 150,000 years separate us from those early people standing around fires beneath the African sky. Yet every time we get dressed, we continue the same silent conversation they began so long ago. A simple piece of fabric carries the weight of survival, imagination, identity, and history all at once. That's why getting dressed is far more than a daily routine. It's one of the oldest traditions our species has never stopped practicing. And somehow, after all these thousands of years of innovation, fashion, technology, and culture, humanity still manages to stand in front of a closet and insist there is absolutely nothing to wear.